Welcome to the God is Awesome podcast. Ken, it's a pleasure to have you, man.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a
Good.
pleasure to be here.
This is going to be good, man. This is going to be good. My name is Aaron. If you guys didn't know, I'm going to be your host today. And on this podcast, well, first of all, we want to thank you for joining wherever you are streaming this from your device. And just want to thank you for joining us. This is a podcast about people's testimonies, everyday, regular Christians, just telling their story of how God has pulled them through struggle and their walk with Christ in life. And we just want to say how testimonies can be like a holy thing. We're talking about how God has worked in someone's life, and the particular subtleties, and it's just it's holy ground. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is not stuff that should be taken lightly. I don't think. This is someone's life. And so today we have Ken today. So before we go over to Ken, before we go over to you, please, we just encourage anyone to share this podcast with anyone who you feel like can relate, or join the group, because we're building a community here of just awesome podcasts where God has just changed everyday regular people's lives. Anyway, let's get things started off. Ken, super happy to have you, man. I'm super excited about our podcast today. Maybe start off by telling us a little bit about yourself, origin story, like where you come from, how did you grow up, and so.
Well, my name is Ken, like Aaron said. I'm originally from New York. I was born in the Bronx. 5 years old, we moved to Long Island, New York, to Suffolk County, Medford, Long Island. I've been a Christian, actually, you could say all of my life.
Oh.
I remember accepting God. I believe it was like 5 or 6 years old. Growing up, my parents, Christian, my mother's side of the family, all Christians. And I remember being baptized. I believe it was like 5 or 6 years old, but, grew up in a Christian home.
Gotcha. And so what was your family life like? What was your home life like?
Well, my father was a cop. My father was a NYPD. And, we had a great childhood, middle class. And everything we wanted, we pretty much had it.
Yeah.
It was, growing up was nice. It was nice.
So you gave your life to Christ, way young, like 15, teenager, like how, like what?
Well, about, 5 or 6 years old. But then as I probably got into my teens, maybe 17, 18, 19, then you kind of veer away, because now I had more freedom, I guess, if you want to say, to go out and hang out with my friends versus just younger,
Sure.
being home.
Yeah.
So.
Gotcha. And so you're kind of finding more freedom, but how was your growing process with Christ? Did you fall away a lot? Were you nominal? Was it kind of like just wishy-washy and lukewarm, or were you really on fire for God?
I think I was on fire for God.
Oh, that's awesome.
Growing up, and even in 7th grade, we had gone to a Christian school that our church had, and even there, just at an early age, 12 years old, speaking in tongues, and I had that fire until I probably was able to just go out on my own, and then there wasn't that constant. I wasn't going to church all the time then, because when I was younger, always going to church with my parents, always at church. My parents always praying whenever relatives would come over. It was always prayer time, and and I remember growing up going to the Brooklyn Tabernacle. And just being amazed at how big that place was. But it was, there was always Christ in our house growing up.
Gotcha. So you had a great foundation for God.
Yes.
You loved God. You were on fire for God.
Mm-hmm.
How did that? Where does that take you into your adulthood? Where does that take you into?
I think it kind of changed again when I was able to go out with my buddies and do things. And when I was 17 years old, I began to dance professionally in a dance club, in a dance troupe, if you want to say. And
Really?
We used to do a lot of shows upstate New York.
Okay.
It was, hip hop dance.
I was about to say, like
freestyle dance,
break dancing.
And then doing that, then I was taught ballroom dancing.
Okay.
And so when we would go and do the shows at the resorts upstate New York, we would go there for the weekend. We would have this big show that we would dance in on Saturday night, but for the whole weekend we were there teaching, certain ballroom classes.
Man.
But doing that again, now I'm moving away. Because then we're there on the weekends and I'm not at church.
Mm-hmm.
And really there was nobody that was a Christian or said, hey, let's take 10 minutes, 5 minutes, let's, say a prayer or let's do this. So none of that was there.
You gradually declined out of it.
Right.
Gotcha.
Right.
Okay.
And then probably, but through all this, I still had my faith, if you want to say.
Yeah.
I guess you want to say I was a carnal Christian.
Okay.
If you want to call it that. I still had my faith. I still prayed to God on my own, but I just wasn't going to church at the time because there was always a show during the weekend or always doing something.
Sure. There's always like a gradual decline, gradual slipping away of like the community and regular, like, just reading the Bible, just basic stuff. And then you just kind of.
Yeah. And basically at that age, I wasn't doing that.
Yeah.
And I still prayed.
Yeah.
I still prayed, but.
You'd never like explicitly denied it.
Right.
You just kind of just had distracted.
And I would still pray and ask God for things. And, but yeah, how it was before in the past where it was just like instilled in you and, and you wanted that, it was, gradually going away in my teenage years.
So it's funny that Ken, you're here because we had your wife here on the podcast maybe just a few episodes ago. And if you're listening to us, the link's in the description. You could hear her side of things and how they met and stuff like that, which is funny. It was a dance club, actually, speaking of that, where you met Amanda.
Club, yeah. And we had met many times before that.
Okay.
So it wasn't until that night.
You're right in your element too.
And that night I was with my cousin and I really didn't want to go out because he was with a girl he was hanging out with.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't want to be a third wheel. I was like, no, come on. You have to come. I'd rather be with you than her.
Sure.
And I had nothing else to do. So I'm like, all right, we'll go.
And then you got a wife.
And then, I met my wife there. And it so happened that night my cousin told his girl he was with, he was going to go home. Amanda had told the guy she was with, she was going to go home. And then we wound up at a friend's house, the four of us.
Yeah.
And then ever since then, we've just been together.
Magic.
Yeah.
Magic.
10 years.
Cool.
10 years.
So tell us how, what are the biggest struggles going into the marriage? And I'm kind of alluding towards what we've got on the show notes today. Talk us through your experience.
Well, at first our marriage was great, and it's always, just getting together. And we were together for 3 years before I asked her to marry me. Some of it was difficult. If you want to say, because having a mixed marriage, where my two children and then her son, Alan, my son, Alan.
Now, you were married before?
I had been married before.
Okay.
I met my ex-wife when I was in the Navy.
Okay.
And then just as I was getting out of the Navy, we had gotten married. We had Nicholas, my firstborn.
Right.
And then when I got out of the Navy, my parents had moved to Florida in 96. I went into the Navy in 94. So in 96, my parents moved to Florida.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was getting out in 97, I had nowhere to go, basically,
Yeah.
Back to New York.
Yeah.
Okay, so I went with my parents.
Gotcha.
And then my daughter, Kendall, was born in Florida. And Nicholas was born in Washington State, where I was stationed.
Gotcha.
But, that marriage lasted 4 years.
Right. So you take that into your marriage with Amanda, mixed family. She's got kids, you've got kids, and you guys have a kid together.
Yeah.
That's as mixed as you could get.
It's great. And then you have your bad times to where, my kids didn't want to listen to Amanda. Yeah. Alan didn't want to listen to me.
Sure.
You're not my mother. No,
Sure.
You're not my father. And then, that caused friction.
Stress. A lot of stress.
And not only causing friction with the children, but then causing friction with Amanda
in the marriage
or myself.
Yeah.
So
you guys are challenged as a partnership.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, there were times where it was just everything was smooth
Sure.
sailing, and then something would happen again. And it's like,
Yeah.
so.
I'm sure.
Hmm.
So you are the brother of three brothers, right?
Right now, I was, yes.
Yeah, you have,
My mom had four boys.
yeah, four boys.
Uh,
Could you tell us a little bit about Sergeant Gary
oh,
and
sure.
your brother, and maybe what um how that came up, like how'd you find out,
Mhm.
and what even happened, if we need to catch up with some people here.
Well, my brother Gary was a deputy sheriff at here in the St. Lucie County Sheriff's Office.
And he was younger than you?
Yeah, he was younger than me, 4 years, 2 days,
Mm-hmm.
younger than me, and he was shot and killed February 28th of 2013. And the January before that, he had just made sergeant,
Wow.
and he was with the sheriff's office for about 13 years when this happened. And actually, the day that it happened, I was at work, and Amanda called me because that morning there was a Port St. Lucie cop that got shot. And she called me, "Hey, did you hear? They said, I just got a call from a friend. Some cop got shot." And I was like, "Oh, okay, no, I didn't hear anything, but let me call Gary. I'm going to call Gary up. Let's see if he answers the phone." And it went to voicemail.
Mm-hmm.
I said, "Hey, I heard a cop got shot. Give me a call. Let me make sure you're alive." And
You said that?
yeah, I left him a message. And then maybe 20 minutes later, my dad calls and he goes, "Did you hear what happened to Gary?" I'm like, "No." Amanda called me saying she heard a cop got shot. And then that's when my dad said that your brother was shot and killed. So, I mean, I kind of didn't know what to think, at first. I was just in shock. Uh, he said, "Yeah, your brother was shot and killed." And so he says, "Come to the house. The sheriff's coming over to the house." So I literally, from upstairs, where my office was, ran down the stairs, ran out the door, and I flew down Port St. Lucie Boulevard, to my parents' house. And just right there, I just, broke in tears, just even seeing my mother in tears, and that just made me, go crazy. And what happened was that Gary was pulling this guy over, and then he took off. Just as he pulled, both cars stopped, the cop took off. So now Gary's kind of in a high-speed chase with him. And then they went down Naylor and Fort Pierce, and it was a dirt road. Kind of, it's not paved or anything. So Gary was behind him. Now, when he slammed on his brakes, uh, Gary slammed on his brakes and kind of went a little bit forward. But now he's kind of there with him, so he had to reverse.
So he's side by side with them.
Right. So as they're slamming on the brakes, Gary had went side by side with him because he couldn't stop. Now, you don't want to be next to this person. So as he put it in reverse, this guy just came out of the car and just started shooting at him. Shooting to where my brother didn't even have a chance to get out of his car. I mean, he opened the door. He didn't even have a chance to take his gun out of his holster or anything. And he just came right there, right to the car, and was just shooting and killed him.
So he was in the high speed chase,
Mm-hmm.
slams on the brakes, he pulls off to the left of him, and then they're at a stop.
Right.
He hits it in reverse, and before he knew it, the guy got out of
And
his
then
car
he just got out of the car.
and
Yeah.
just started shooting
Yep. And just started shooting.
while he was in his car.
Yeah. Yep. And then at the same time, one of the other deputies was coming around the corner, and Tisdale was shooting at the other cop. And the other cop went, called it in. It's this car, this, and he went into the car, and just hearing the the radio that they played in the court and everything of what happened. But thank God that they did catch him.
Yeah.
That he didn't get away, and it was a manhunt. I mean, they caught him right away.
Yeah.
They caught him right away.
What was the what was the feeling? What were you dealing with internally when you first heard?
Just
And when
a
you
lot
learned?
of shock at the time, and then a lot of anger towards the one who killed him.
Sure.
That was kind of the first impression that you get. At first, you're shocked. I don't even remember the funeral. I remember. I mean, there's bits and pieces that I do remember, but a lot of the funeral. I mean, there was like over 4,000 people there, and just half of it I don't even remember.
Yeah.
I'm just, because my mind literally was just really not there, still in shock.
Numb.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember the when news broke of this. I mean, there was a huge outpouring of support from the community. It was just everywhere. In Port St. Lucie, Florida, if you guys are listening to us, it's just it was everywhere. And a lot of people don't, when it dies down, that's maybe only like 2 weeks after, 3 weeks after it kind of loses public eye, and then the families are left still to pick up the pieces. So what was the family like? How was the family dealing with it? How are you dealing with it?
Everybody was dealing with it, I guess, in their own way. Still being a Christian family, everyone still, had their faith in God, and, dealing with how they're, in their own way. With me personally, I was just hurt.
Yeah.
And then I started to get mad because.
Explain that. Like, describe that.
Well, because it was all over the news, and it just doesn't go away. Because then it's in the news again, then it's in the news again, the trial, or, we don't know when it's a trial. It's just constant. You're sitting there watching TV, and then there's the picture of your brother, again, when you're just starting in a way to calm down, and then now you see your brother again, and then they're talking about it, and it was a constant, on the news.
Reminder.
Right, like a constant reminder.
You couldn't escape it.
No. And then my brothers and I, and even my parents, we got a sticker on the back of our cars. It says, "In loving memory of my brother, Sergeant Gary Morales," and it has the day he was born to end of watch, when he died. And we have the sheriff's star with his badge. I would be stopped at a light, and people would come knocking on the door and say, "I knew your brother, and your brother did this for me, and your brother did that, and if it wasn't for your brother, my son would have been in jail," and this and that. And it's all great stories. But then now I'm thinking to myself, as these stories start coming in of all these people who knew my brother, I'm saying, God, why'd you take my brother? I mean, if he was helping all of these people and he changed all of these lives, why? Why would you take him? And so I guess I began to become angry with God. And not just, with God becoming angry. Just at first I didn't want to do anything. My wife would say, come on, let's go somewhere. Let's take Kenneth to the park. I didn't want to leave the house. I was just kind of in such a depression. But then when I would leave the house, I kind of like hid it from everybody. I would smile and, "Hey, how you doing?" But, inside it was just,
Turmoil.
the emptiness that my brother was not there. And then the anger that, look at all this stuff that my brother does for these people that he's done. How could you let it happen?
Yeah.
I would ask.
So your whole foundation of Christian upbringing, Christian household, even in bringing Christianity into the marriage, it started to erode because of your bitterness towards God.
Yeah.
It was all centered around this question, like, why would you take such a good person, my brother, but also that, like, a good person did stuff around the community and like helped so many people.
Yeah, it just, again, growing up, being a Christian, and then, coming from a family that's so faith-filled, it was something that I was dealing with personally. And just that anger just kept building and building, and it did. It trickled into my marriage, arguments with my wife, and even, threatening divorce.
Sure. Parenting.
And right, parenting,
Yeah.
that's, your son, you better get a hold of your son, and then, well, you better get a hold of your son.
Yeah. And we think that it's like all like separate, like this, but that angerness kind of roots itself.
Yeah,
in you.
yeah, and it was just growing to where, even with Nicholas and Kendall, I mean, I would just snap,
Mhm.
and I would just yell and scream at the top of my lungs, and that wasn't me.
Yeah.
That was just, a lot of it was the anger.
How did Amanda deal with that? Your wife?
She cried a lot.
Yeah.
I made her cry a lot. I mean, I was a real jerk.
Yeah.
I was a real jerk, and and I remember one day I was just that's it. I'm done. I even took my wedding ring off. I put it on my nightstand, and I just left. I had nowhere to go, so I went to my parents' house.
Yeah.
I'm like, I got nowhere to go. So I went to my parents. I didn't even tell my mother what was going on. It was
Yeah.
just there. And then
Because that's where you went to grieve.
yeah, and then I was outside in the driveway, and then Amanda actually came, to my parents' house, and
She followed you.
well, I think she knew I wasn't going to go anywhere.
Sure.
So she let me check, William and Candy's house. Uh, so I was there. I was actually in the driveway, and she showed up, and then she gave me the wedding ring back, and
Oh no.
kind
Oh,
of,
that's so good.
we made up then,
Yeah.
but then still times would happen where just, the anger of just, I, at the time, I didn't care. I didn't care anymore. I didn't want to be married. So what? I don't
Yeah.
care what happens. You know what?
And she became like a punching bag for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And, just me being a real jerk to her, and,
Wow.
being a jerk of a father, even to my kids.
Yeah. And no doubt she
know?
understood that this was all coming out of this
Mm-hmm.
place from your brother and grief
Yeah.
and sorrow.
Yeah.
So let me ask you something. You said you asked God why,
Mm-hmm.
right? You wondered this. This is a question you wondered. Did you ever get an answer?
I didn't get an answer, but what came to me is that I can't question God. Everything happens, if you want to say, for a reason. God is always in control.
Yeah.
So I can't, why did you do this? I got to the point, and this was maybe like a year, maybe a little over a year later, that, I'm thinking, what am I doing? I started realizing, what am I doing? Questioning God.
Yeah.
Why am I blaming him? And then, I thinking to myself, I can't blame him, for what happened to my brother. What happened that day, but as a Christian, I can't put blame on God.
So you lived with this,
Mm-hmm.
at least in its like very darkest anger for like a year.
I would say it was about a year. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you went through the year anniversary then with this.
Yeah.
Was that hard?
The first year anniversary,
Yeah.
we had a dinner. A lot of the family, a lot of the friends, we got together, and we went to a restaurant. And it was great seeing a lot of the family that was there. But then again, it's still hurting because you're still grieving.
Yeah.
I'm still missing my brother. I mean, to this day, I still miss him. But you're still grieving.
Yeah. Does it get? Let me ask you something. Does it get annoying when people bring them up? Or is it like you have to try to guard from that, or do you welcome it?
It did, because as much as people wanted to give their condolences, when you have hundreds of people giving their condolences, it's like you need your time to breathe and not even think about what happened.
Sure. And then you got to put on a face to try to like welcome all these people.
Yeah.
And now you're like serving them.
Mm-hmm.
And then it becomes like, maybe it becomes like where they give you their condolence because of them. And maybe you don't feel like you're being taken care of, or like you just have to put this face up to just kind of
it's just, I mean, like, again, it was all over the news.
Yeah.
All over the news, even for years later, on
Really?
the news. And
I haven't seen it.
and the newspapers, and I've saved almost all of the articles. Any articles that came out, I've saved them. I've saved them. I've saved them.
Why?
I want to make an album of
Mhm.
them. I want to get them laminated and put it in there, for however long that will last, 50 years, 100 years,
Mhm.
so that they'll, whoever my grandkids, my great grandkids, or whatever, will know who Gary was
Sure.
and what happened to him.
Yeah.
It'll be there, versus just word of mouth. Well, let's look at this album.
Yeah.
Let's look at everything that happened.
Gotcha. In memory.
Yeah.
So you deal with this for a year, and then a year comes. Not to say it ended after a year, but to say that the page started turning at that. Like you started coming to the realization. What made that realization happen, that you can't blame God for this?
Well, also before then, like within that year, I was still going to church.
Okay.
But my heart wasn't in it. It was just, let me show my face.
Mhm.
Let me show my face in church.
Was that Sunlight? That was Sunlight.
We did go to a couple churches before Sunlight.
Okay.
But then when Amanda said, "Hey, let's go to Sunlight," okay.
So how's it?
So we go to church.
Mhm.
We come here to Sunlight, but it was still, we came a couple times, and then come Sunday, I don't feel like going to church.
Mm.
Amanda, come on, let's go to church. No, you go if you want to go. I just didn't feel like going.
You tried, but
I tried, but
Yeah.
it just, again, there was that anger, and I just wasn't into it. When I was going to church before, it was just, I went to church because, I would go to church with my parents.
Mhm.
My parents would pick us up or whatever, or we'd meet them at the church. But it's just, yeah, I didn't want to go to church anymore.
Any particular reason? Just
I was either tired Sunday morning, or just, I just want to lay down.
no motivation.
No motivation. I just want to lay down.
Yeah.
And then my father, around that time, started Bible study. My wife and I go, and my cousin, her husband, go. And then, once a week, then as we started going to Bible study and reading and digging into the Word, I'd say that's when it started tugging at my heart again.
Interesting.
To wanting to go to the Bible study. And then Amanda had said, "Hey, come on, let's go to church." And so went to church. We came here.
So what was it about the Bible study? Did you read the Bible more?
Yeah, no, we went into the scriptures, and then, read a few lines, and then we discuss, and,
Was it the support from the community? Or
no, this was just my parents, and my cousin and her husband Bradley. They're just so spirit filled, and
it's a family Bible study.
Yeah, it's a family Bible study.
And it was just reading the Bible.
Yeah, we were just reading the Bible.
Wow.
And just from being at church and not really paying attention.
Sure.
Just, I'd rather be home,
Yeah.
and not really paying attention, to where now it's us in my parents' living room, to where you have to pay attention.
Yeah. You could check out at church. Yeah.
You have to pay attention.
Sure. Otherwise,
because then we would ask questions, what do you think this means? Or, we would go about it, or, we would ask questions. But then doing that, okay, now that kind of wanted me to start going to church again. And
Gotcha.
Then when Amanda said, let's go to Sunlight again. And so then, then we went, and then every Sunday, then we started going on Sundays. Eventually getting into I think we were here for about a year. And then we got into the children's ministry and helping out with the children's ministry.
Yeah.
And that was, they wanted people to help. And we were like, rather than just coming to church on Sunday, we need to get involved with this church. If we're going to make this part of our lives, coming to this church, it can't just be coming on a Sunday, and then we go home, because that's what we were doing.
Yeah.
And
you're a big part of the children's ministry.
Yeah.
Huge part.
And so, that's what we decided. Let's do the children's ministry. We have our 9-year-old, Kenneth, and he was in there, and that's when we decided, well, let's do the children's ministry.
Yeah.
We'll get into the children's ministry. And now it's been what?
4 years.
Probably like 4 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, 4 years, and we love it.
That's awesome.
We love it.
So where does this leave you with forgiving with your brother's murderer? What was the court? Did you see him in court?
Yeah.
Okay.
I went to court. I mean, the guy was like 10 feet in front of me, to where there was times where I just literally wanted to jump.
Was this within that year or after the year?
This was 2 years later.
Wow.
So we had to wait like 2 years before trial.
Yeah, usually that stuff takes a long time.
Mhm.
So you've already started like the healing process.
Yeah.
And then you have to look him
And now you have to go through court
in the face.
and go through all this.
What was that like?
Again, I mean, that was hard, because now you're hearing the details.
Sure.
Of what happened, the recordings of him on the radio, and
no doubt that was hard.
Yeah, I mean, that was hard, to where one of the days they were showing the pictures of him, of the bullets and all that stuff, and we left the courtroom.
Sure.
Because that is not a picture I want to see of my brother.
No, that's not unnecessary.
So while they were doing that whole time, we were just, waiting out of the courtroom. And then when they were done with that specific, thing they were showing there with the pictures, I mean, because they had the big screen.
Yeah.
And, that is not a picture I wanted to see of my brother.
No, that's not what we're here for, So did you have the resources within you in that next year? It's 2 years after, to like forgive?
Well, no, and actually it wasn't until about 4 months ago. And this past February was 6 years that my brother had passed. And I couldn't forgive him. As much as I went to church and had faith, and I just couldn't forgive him yet.
So what happened 4 months ago?
I still had the anger. It wasn't until about 4 months ago, where a few years ago we did a blessing ceremony for my kids.
Mm-hmm.
And my brother Brian got us all these rings here. And this is the Lord's Prayer. And, the Lord's Prayer, where it tells you, forgive us our trespasses, we have to forgive.
As we forgive
them, right? Yeah. So we have to forgive. My parents forgave him. My older brother forgave him. And if I'm having this tugging in my heart, to where, we want to come to church. We want to learn more. We want to get involved. And as a Christian, I can't pick and choose what I want to follow in the Bible.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely.
Right? It's, it's all God's word. It's all God's promise. So I can't say, well, as a Christian, I'll follow this, but that I'm not going to follow.
Yeah.
And it just got to the point where, as now I want to get more, learning more, as kind of being more of an adult now, growing older. I'll be 46 in July.
Yeah.
Just wanting it more. And so because of that just, I have to forgive him. His judgment day will come.
Yeah.
He's going to spend his life in prison. But what stinks now is that he got the death penalty. Okay. And the jury was 9-3, death penalty. But now the Florida Supreme Court said that the death penalty, all 12 jurors have to vote death penalty. So now we have to go through trial again for the sentencing phase. Jeez. So in other words, now we have to go through not the whole trial, but go through the sentencing phase again, hearing all this stuff again. I won't go. I will go on the last day, when they're going to say either yes, you will get the death penalty, or you are remaining life in prison. Because right now it's a death penalty. Either way, he's not getting out.
Yeah.
But again, now we have to go through that. And I won't go. I'll go on the last day when he's sentenced.
Sure. You've already lived through that.
Yeah. But the last day when he's sentenced, I'll go.
And so you said that the resource that you had to forgive is that you saw that God forgave you in his word.
Yeah.
And that the Lord's Prayer reminded you of that.
Yeah. I mean, I wear it every day, and you have to. I can't, again, I can't pick and choose what I want to believe in the Bible, or how I want to act, or how I want to
Sure.
follow the Bible.
Sure. But it took you 6 years.
Yeah, up until about 4 months ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
There's no there's no time limit. There's no rush to heal.
Yeah,
There's
I
no
just,
you know.
I couldn't find it in my heart. I was
Yeah.
still, even though I didn't blame God anymore for what happened to Gary, I passed that, but that forgiveness of
Sure.
this guy,
Sure.
I couldn't do it.
So, and what about your marriage? You said, I mean, we saw that you were using Amanda as a punching bag.
Hmm.
Did that ramp up? Did that slowly die away? Did you have a big conversation? What happened there?
I think once we started getting back to church and coming to church, and then when Amanda became a Christian, because Amanda grew up Catholic, uh, and we were coming here, and then we became members. We went to the class, became members.
Yeah.
Amanda got baptized. And around that time, that's when the marriage started getting better.
Yeah.
Because now we're going to church, we're reading the Word, and we're trying to live it as much as we can, even though
Sure.
we all fall short.
Yeah.
But you still, okay, wipe yourself up, try again.
Yeah.
Try again.
Yeah.
Like, I say I could be in the car and I'll be praying, and then somebody will like cut me off and, hey, you dummy.
Yeah.
Meanwhile I'm in prayer, and then all of a sudden I'm calling somebody a dummy. Sorry, Lord.
Yeah.
Sorry, Lord. Sorry, Lord. So
Yeah.
but our marriage started getting better as we started focusing more on the church and getting,
Wow.
going to church,
Yeah.
as much as we can, going every Sunday. But not only that, whenever there's other events in the church, to try and go, and then helping with the children's ministry. And then also that helping out with the children's ministry, to where if I'm teaching these kids, the lessons or whatever that we get, us as an adult, we have to, not only am I teaching them, I'm teaching me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
And we have to be congruent with what we're teaching.
Yeah.
I mean, otherwise you're a hypocrite,
Yeah.
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 So, we're winding down here. Is there anything you want to say to someone who has lost a loved one from your experience? Maybe they had something similar. More specifically, maybe like families of police officers. Is there something you want to? Do you have any kind of wisdom or?
With me, you're always gonna miss. You're always gonna miss your loved one.
Yeah.
And till this day, there are days where I'll think of Gary and I'll cry, and I'll start crying. And I mean, it's 6 years already, 6 years later, and and then there's happy times. You have those happy memories, but then one day, all of a sudden you just start crying because you miss that person. You just, you have to pray.
Yeah.
Just pray that God will comfort you, and He has comforted me.
Mm-hmm.
But I think He's also allowed me kind of to grieve, if you want to say, because you're going to miss that family member.
Yeah.
But I mean, a lot of comfort, a lot of prayer to comfort me, heal me, from this hurt.
Yeah.
And God answers.
Is there anything else you maybe left out in your testimony, or anything you want to say to any police officer out there?
Well, or to, any first responders, policemen, thank you. You guys, there's people just don't know the stuff that they deal with on an everyday basis.
Yeah.
And now with everybody is so anti-police, yeah, you have some bad seeds.
Yeah.
There are some bad policemen. You know what? Eventually, it won't last. They'll get caught with whatever they're doing, and they're giving the good guys a bad name.
Mm-hmm.
But not everybody's like that.
Yeah.
The majority of these cops, I mean, they're there to help
members.
This community, and and they want to go home. They want to do their jobs. They want to help. They want to go home to their families.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, thank you. It is not easy what they do.
No.
At all.
No.
At
No,
all.
it isn't.
and my dad was a cop 20 years in New York City.
Oh, geez. You see that
And
all.
that was just, and growing up, you pray, Father, bring my dad home safely.
Sure.
Bring my dad home safely. And thank God, he came home safe.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I got one last question for you, and it's how we end every podcast. But before we do that, I just want to thank you for sharing your story and your struggles. It's not easy, and it's not taken lightly. And I mean, yeah, I feel like I knew Gary a little bit through you, and just thank you. It's really tough.
You're welcome.
If you're out there and you really felt this testimony, or you really you think that it might help someone else, please share it. Please tag someone in it. Please invite them to the group. Please get them in contact with Ken. I'm sure you wouldn't object to someone like reaching out to you or anything.
Not at all.
Yeah, we're building something here, like it's a support group of people who just have God just working in their lives from very dark places to hopefully a place that's a lot better. But Ken, let's finish off this testimony. Why do you think God is awesome?
I think because he's always with us. I mean, he never leaves us. Even though we question why, I prayed for this, I prayed for that. Why are you not here? Or why did this happen? Why did that happen? But he's always with us.
Yeah.
And I think that's one big thing, that no matter what we do, we sin every day. No matter what we do, he's still there.
Yeah.
He is still there. He still loves us. He's still with us, and he's there with open arms for us.
Amen.
So,
Amen.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Ken, for sharing. Thank you guys for joining in again. We want to just thank everyone who joined us live. We got Glenna, and your wife is on live here.
Oh, yeah. Hey, baby.
Pam, thanks for watching. Rose, thanks for watching. Everyone, we want to thank you guys all. We love you all, and we will catch you on the next episode.